So this is my review for Wicked for Good. Now I was really excited for this movie based on the fact I love the first Wicked movie, and I was really excited going into part two. Like, okay, I'm excited to see how Wizard of Oz is going to connect to it all, and how they're going to connect both stories. I did hear after watching the movie that apparently the Broadway show, because I've never seen a Broadway show play, that the second act of the Broadway show play is weaker than the first act. That the first act has the stronger story, and you can definitely tell this movie follows that. And it sounds like this movie maybe follows the second act of the story a little too closely because from what I heard, with the second act being weaker, is this is how I feel about the second part of the movie. Also, this is that I did not like Wicked for Good personally. I love the first Wicked movie. It made me a Wizard of Oz fan. Like I like the Wizard of Oz movie, but Wicked for me, the first movie, is my favorite Wizard of Oz movie. As someone who hasn't seen a Broadway play, and I came out and be like, oh man, I really love these voices of the characters. I'm really excited to see where they go next. And I just found this to be a gigantic disappointment sequel wise. I did not like Wicked for Good. Are there good elements in this movie? Yes. On the other hand, though, there's a lot of problems I have with this movie. More issues and things I like about this movie. And coming off of that first movie, which I love, this was just such a step down from that first movie. Let me start with the positives. I think Cynthia Erivo is still great as a Wicked Witch. I will say this movie, I feel like the first movie is more the Wicked Witch story, and this one is more Glenda's story. And I feel like Glenda gets more of the emotional moments in this movie, whereas I felt like the Wicked Cynthia Erivo got more of the emotional moments in the first movie, with that being more of Alpha's story. I still think she's great in this movie, obviously. I think she's great as this version of Wicked Witch, and I think her and Ariel Grande, when they're on screen together, that to me is one of the movies at its best. When they're on screen together and you still feel that great chemistry they have between the two characters. Ariel Grande, I think, is great in this movie. She gives a great performance, and like I said, I would say she's more of the. This is more of a Glinda story, this movie, than an Alpha story, and I think she does a great job with the emotional moments in this movie. She gives a fantastic performance, and I love I love over a whole story arc of how she becomes Glinda, how she gets to how she becomes Glinda the Good that you see in Wizard of Oz. I think the other cast members all do a great job. I think Jeff 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 Goldblum does a great job as a wizard again. I loved him as a wizard in the first movie. I think he's great again as a wizard in this. There's only one cast member I felt like I wasn't a fan of their performance in this movie, and I'll get into that with the negatives. Jonathan Bailey, I think he's great in this movie as Friero. I will say this though, I didn't feel his chemistry with Cynthia Erivo as much as I did in the first movie. I do feel like they didn't like their chemistry. I don't know. I feel like their chemistry was better in the first movie than it was in this movie for me personally. I still think he's great as Friero. I still love the character of Friero. So I think he's great in the movie. Also, still, I do think the chemistry, like I said, between him and Cynthia Erivo wasn't as strong as it was in the first movie, at least for me personally. Which is, that's a negative. Production design wise, the movie looks great. I think this movie looks great, just like the first movie. I love the way the world looks. Cinematography looks great. I love how the colors pop. So, technical cinematography and just production design, the movie looks great. I think the CGI for animals look pretty good in this movie. It didn't look bad to me with the CGI for animals or anything like that. I thought they looked great in the first movie. I think they still look really good in this movie. I think the final song, which I'm forgetting what the name of the song is, but the final song to end between Alpha and Glinda, that to me is that I thought that was a great song. That to me was the one song in the movie that stood, that I would say is the one that was like, okay, that's the one that hit me. And I'm gonna get into the negatives with the songs in the movie though, and the one positive I say is that the one song at the end I think is great. Now, when it comes to the negatives of this movie, this is why I get into a lot of problems I have with this movie. One of the problems I have with this movie is that this movie feels extremely rushed. It feels like in this movie they are rushing through plot points like even like the Wizard of Oz stuff in this movie feels very forced into this movie. It feels like a movie was trying to do the Wicked story and trying to do the Wizard of Oz story, and they're just not fitting together. And a lot of story arcs feel very rushed in this movie. So I'm gonna spoil some stuff here. If you haven't seen Wicked for Good, stop the video now, okay? I'm gonna get into some big spoilers about the Wizard of Oz stuff and how the Wicked characters connect to that. So stop the video now if you haven't seen it. All right. So one of the examples of it feeling worse to me is that I look at the Tin Man story, where you later on the character Bach, yeah, that's the name of the character, who the Mustang character, he's the one that becomes a Tin Man in this, and his whole story just felt very worse. Like the whole thing with the Wicked versus sister, with I'm forgetting the character's name. She like her whole character. Oh, Nessa. Alpha's sister. I have sister. I found her like the way her character acted in this. The Alpha's sister is in a wheelchair, and that whole story of Bach felt just extremely rushed in this movie to me. Like it felt, and her performance. I'll I'll be honest. I don't think her performance was the strongest in this movie. Some of that I think has to do with the writing, where I felt like her character, the way she acted when you meet her at the beginning of this movie, she just comes off kind of like not just unlikable to me. Where I was like, it just felt like we missed a story beat. It felt like I was like, okay, she just like she comes off like she just hates Alpha, and she's talking about her dad's funeral, how Alpha wasn't there, and it just she felt so like nasty in this, and it just felt very underdeveloped. And I didn't feel like you developed that. And you took the time to like make me into her being like this nasty person who would treat Bach like this, and I whole like I feel like you could have developed that and done it in a way where when you see her acting like this, it's like it makes sense, and it just felt very rushed to me. And how like by accident trying to keep Bach the same when she by accident like reads a spell from off of his book and it turns Bach into Tin Man. That whole story arc just felt extremely rushed to me. And I just didn't like her character in this. She was very unlikable character. Performance I thought wasn't the strongest. So like there's two actors in this movie actually that I would say had weak performances. She was one of the two. So that whole story arc just felt extremely rushed for me. I think the Tin Man looks great. Like I like the look of the Tin Man in this movie. I think it looks great. But like Nessa's story with Bach and him becoming Tin Man, that was one of the examples of it feeling lost. Another example of the story feeling lost is the Cowardly Lion, which you find out the cub that you saw in the first movie that Alpha and Fairy rescues from the classroom turns out to be the Cowardly Lion from the Wizard of Oz story. And he shows up in this scene where where the animals are trying to leave, and you have the bear who took care of Alpha when she was a kid. I'm forgetting the name of the character. You have the lion show up, the Cowardly Lion, and he's like all scared of Alpha talking about what she did, and I was like, that made no sense to me. Why the Cowardly Lion would hate Alpha, the Wicked West, because in the first movie she didn't do anything wrong to the lion. She literally got the lion out of the cage, freed the lion home with Fiona. So I don't understand why the Cowardly Lion would hate Alpha in this movie. It made no sense. There are times in this movie, this is one of the problems I have with the writing in this movie, with the fact of it feeling worse, is there are times where characters make choices in this movie where I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, and it feels like you're just having these characters make choices to try to fit Wizard of Oz together so it can sort of line up, but at the same time, at the end of the movie, it just there's stuff that just doesn't make sense and fit together. So yeah, again, you just have characters making decisions in this movie that feels like that doesn't make any sense, and just doesn't feel like you got to that point organically. It just feels like you rushed through plot point, and characters making choices just to force the characters to make choices to try to fit into the Wizard of Oz story. That's one of the other problems with this movie is that half this movie feels like it's trying to be a Wizard of Oz story. The other half feels like it's trying to be Glinda and Alpha story that you set up in the first movie, and they just don't fit together. Even Fiero's story, where you find he at the end of the movie he becomes the Scarecrow. There's a couple of problems I have with his story too, where he becomes the Scarecrow, and then he disappears for a huge chunk of the movie. And I don't understand why he would join Dorothy. This is one of the things that doesn't make sense about this story, trying to fit it with Wizard of Oz, is that why would he join Dorothy if he knows Alpha isn't bad and he's in love with her? That made no sense to me. And what Dorothy just like he just like there's money trying on the other road and he decided to join her. That made just no sense to me. So that part of the story, even the ending doesn't make sense to me either. What happens to Wicked West? I feel like there's some holes there where I'm like, you didn't explain that stuff. Where I feel like you needed to throw some explanation at the end there. So I felt like Jonathan Bailey was kind of like the second half of the movie, he just disappears, and him joining Dorothy makes no sense, character wise, story wise. But with the fact he like has nothing against Alpha and he's in love with her and he knows she's not bad, so I don't get like I don't understand that part of it. That made no sense to me personally. And I feel like that's a gigantic hole. Even Timmons, Timmons, I can understand sort of his hatred towards Alpha, but it was her sister that accidentally cast a spell. Well, it wasn't like really a complete Alpha. It wasn't like complete Alpha's fault there. So even his hatred towards Alpha, I felt like that wasn't completely earned. And this Nessa's death in this movie, again, we're trying to fit it in with the Wizard of Oz because she's the sister of the Wicked Witch in the Wizard of Oz. Her death was just the way it was done in the movie. I understand you gotta have this is an example of the Wizard of Oz stuff where you have to have it be the Wizard of Oz story, so it has to happen where the house has to fall on it. And just to me, it was just stupid how it happens. When it comes to you find out Madam, I forget the name, Madam Marble, yeah. The character Michelle Yeoh plays, where she's the one that creates the twist that has the house that falls on Wicked Witch's sister. Again trying to connect the two stories that I felt like you didn't need to do that, and it just to me it was kind of dumb. And speaking of Michelle Yeoh, I thought she was great in the first movie, and okay, that has more of a part in more of a gets to be more of a villain in this movie when it comes to her kind of being the main villain. I thought her performance was not that great in this movie. I thought she was much better in the first movie. I don't know what happened in this movie, but when she's trying to play this character even more of a villain, I'm not buying in this movie. And the performance at times felt a little weak for me personally. And the whole idea of her being the one that sets it up, just a lot of questions there. How did she how did she know about Dorothy and getting that Dorothy was coming and where the house was going to be at to and Nessa and all that. I had just a lot of questions about that stuff too. I feel like there's some holes there where stuff just isn't making sense when you're connecting these two stories. So I had a problem with that. Also, as much as I love Jeff Goldblum as a wizard, there's one weak point I have with him in this movie, and that he cannot sing. I love Jeff Goldblum; he's a great actor. I love him as a wizard, but when he's trying to sing in this movie, same with Michelle Yeoh, he's even worse. I feel like anytime they try to sing, because they get to sing more in this movie, and I feel like when they're singing, I'm just like, oh god, they just it pulls me out. 'Cause I'm just like, you can't sing. I think it was smart in the first movie where you have the wizard have one song in that movie, and it's more of a talking song where you don't see Jeff Goldblum sing really all that much in the first movie. It's like one short scene, not a real long scene, not too short a scene, but just enough, and it's more of a talking type song scene. When he tries to sing more in this movie, and Michelle Yeoh, oh my god, great actress, but she's the worst singer in my opinion out of the cast, and it really shows in this movie with her, and it shows a little bit with Jeff Goldblum. Where I just feel like they definitely, you can tell they great actors, but singing wise, not the strong suit. So that was another weak point with their characters in this movie for me. I think the songs were just very forgettable. Even the song "No Good Deed" was. I like the song. I like that song. I just felt like the build up to it wasn't earned when it comes to Cynthia's arc of the Wicked Witch, where I feel like you didn't build up enough to that moment to hit. That should be a big moment where I'm like, okay, this is a big emotional moment. And it felt flat to me because you didn't build it up enough. And Cynthia Vu's character, Wicked Witch, I felt like I didn't mind making her the kind of like a sympathetic villain in the first movie. I thought they did a great job with that. In this movie, at the end, she didn't really feel like full on villain still in this movie to this point. So it just feels like even at the end of this movie, I didn't feel like she went full on villain as much as I feel like she should have. If you tell me this is the movie that turns on into the Wicked West, and I felt like you didn't at the end of the movie I still didn't feel like she was full on villain. I also have a problem with the this might be a nitpick, but the whole idea of Glinda like taking the Dorothy, no, taking Nessa's slippers and giving it to Dorothy. That like I have a problem with that also because I'm like if you're because you said up in the first movie, Alpha and Glinda, they're really great friends, and they're still friends in this movie. An idea that she would be like, let me give the slippers of my dead friend, my best friend's sister, to a random girl I've never met. She took those slippers. Like this might be silly, but she took those slippers off of her best friend's sister's dead body and gave it to a random girl. I, I was just like, again, you're trying to fit the Wizard of Oz stuff together, and it's just like that part of it I wasn't a fan of. That moment too, also where you see Alpha and Glenda talking there after you see Dorothy, you see her like Dorothy off in the like they never show Dorothy's face, but when you see Glenda when you see Glenda like talking to Dorothy from like behind, and Cynthia Vu's character Alpha comes in and they have a talk about she told her she gave like Dorothy her sister's slippers. And again, this like goofy fight where she's like trolling the wand around, and that part came off so silly to me in this movie. That to me is like one of the worst moments in this movie, where it's just so goofy, and it just tone wise, you just had her sister get a house stone on her. It just came off silly to me. I'm not a fan of how they treat Dorothy in this movie. I understand from the Broadway play that Dorothy isn't a big character in that story. I get that. In a film though, that doesn't work. In a film, it just feels very awkward that you're like not showing Dorothy from the front and you only see her from behind as kind of like a afterthought or a thing that's in the background. I hated that choice. I understand in the Broadway play from what I heard, that's how it is. That's to me one of the examples where I felt like you stuck too close to the Broadway play and you still changed that to fit the movie. So I wasn't a fan of how they like treated the Dorothy character in this. Again, I understand. I haven't seen the Broadway play, and I understand from my whole Broadway play fans that's accurate towards the Broadway play of Dorothy not being in really the second act all that much. When you're doing a movie, though, it doesn't work in my opinion. So I had a problem with that. There's also the ending of the movie where you find out the Wicked Witch didn't really die, and I have definitely some holes with that they don't explain. Like, how did Dorothy not know the Wicked Witch was dead? Was Fiero in on that whole thing? Did he like? Because at the end when he finally pops up and you see him as a scarecrow, I'll be honest, it looks kind of goofy him as a scarecrow in this movie. That didn't really work for me. I mean, I'm glad it was practical from what I heard. It just for me, it looked off for me personally. That's a personal thing. But how did he like? How did he know that the Wicked Witch was still gonna Alpha was still gonna be there and alive when Dorothy put the wall on her? I was like, was he? Did he like? did Dorothy not check to see if the Wickless was dead? Was she in on the plan? Was she in on it with the Wickless faking like she was gonna like fake her death? Did Pharaoh know she was gonna fake her death? Why did he go with Dorothy? And like, how did he know she was gonna Alpha was still gonna be there at the end alive? It just there's just so many things about Alpha being alive at the end that make no sense, and I feel like there's a bunch of plot holes there that he just didn't explain. So I have a problem with that, with the ending of Alpha being alive. I feel like they didn't explain it, and there's just so many plot holes. I was just like, I have like so many questions about how that makes sense, and stuff you just felt like you just didn't explain, or you just like it was off screen. I'm supposed to just accept it. So it's just to me a movie that feels extremely rushed. Characters making choices that don't make sense, rushing through plot points. Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Yeoh, not the strongest singers. Michelle Yeoh giving a bad perform to me, not a good performance. The actress who plays Nessa, I don't think was very good. I didn't like her character in this movie. She was unlikable. The whole Wizard of Oz stuff felt like they were trying to force that stuff in together with the Wicked stuff. Also, the animal subplot, which I really love how that was set up in the first movie. That scene where Alpha goes to see the animals and they're like on a yellow brick road and they're gonna like leave Oz and you have the Cowardly Lion show up and say that's up Alpha and they decide to leave. She does this whole big song and they still decide to leave. And that whole animal subplot in this movie felt very underdeveloped. I feel like you set it up. You did a great job of setting it up in the first movie, and then in this movie, it just felt very underdeveloped, and you just didn't really go anywhere with it. And and even the song just felt kind of like a pointless song because they still decided to leave. So the animal subplot, I felt like was underdeveloped in this movie. I feel like you could have done more with that, and you didn't. So I feel like to me, I feel like they didn't develop that well in this movie. Like to me, they did a great job setting it up. In this movie, it felt to me like it was kind of like an afterthought the animal subplot, and they just didn't really go anywhere with it in this. The songs in this movie, none of them stand out outside of the final song. They were all kind of forgettable. Like No Good Deed, I think is a good song. I just wish when he like it was built up to a way where it felt earned to me, and it just didn't hit me emotionally like I wanted it to. Like I do like that song, but the emotional part of it, I to me felt flat, and it just felt like you didn't build up to that, and you earned that. And the Fio love story with Alpha, like I said, I think I feel like him and Cynthia Weaver had better chemistry in the first movie. I don't know why, but there was something about like even that part of the story with Fio's love story with Alpha. I felt like that felt worse too. Like it was underdeveloped in this movie, so it's a movie that feels like washed over the place. Plot points going through quickly in this movie. We're just washing through plot points quickly. Character choices that don't make sense. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that you can find holes in that don't line up with the Wizard of Oz, and it feels like you're trying to force the Wizard of Oz story in this movie. There's definitely some questions with the Wicked Witch surviving at the end that I feel like they didn't explain. I feel like the Wicked West didn't really become like I didn't feel like she was a villain at the end of this movie. With when you see the Wicked West in the Wisdom movie, she's a villain. Like you feel like okay, this is a bad she's a bad West. In this movie, I feel like in this movie you should have had her feel like she's become a full on villain. Like you could have had the second half of this movie where you see her become the villain that you know in the Wisdom movie, and the first half of this movie you have it be where her and Glenn are still working together. Also, the other problem is that Glenn and her are separated for a lot of scenes in this movie, and when they're not together, you really just the movie gets less interesting. So overall, Wicked for Good. It's just to me, I find this movie to be a mess and very washed, and those things just the issues I had with this movie, plot wise, with the Western two plot points, and the character beats not feeling earned, and feeling like characters are making decisions that don't make sense, and the Wizard of Oz stuff feeling like half this movie's trying to be the Wizard of Oz story, the other half's trying to be Wicked Part 2 and not fitting together. So it's just overall a movie I just didn't like. I can totally understand that this is one of those movies where it seems like Wicked fans are gonna really love it. And from what I heard, it sticks pretty close to the second act of the play with when it comes to the story and all that. I know this movie did have some new original songs. I don't know which songs are like new ones, which ones are from the act two of the play. Overall, though, for me, I did not like Wicked for Good. As somebody who loves that first Wicked movie, who went in with a lot of excitement, this to me was one of the biggest disappointments of the year. Like, I would definitely recommend the first Wicked. To be honest, I wouldn't recommend Wicked for Good. That's just how I feel personally. I totally understand it. You know, if you're somebody that loves this movie and you're a Wicked fan and you got a lot out of this movie, for me personally, I just found it to be a gigantic, disappointing sequel to the first one, which I thought was fantastic. So that's my thoughts on Wicked for Good. Until next time, movie fans.